Hello, welcome back to 3 Delirium. My name is AJ, and we're on the floor today. Hello, welcome back to 3 Delirium. My name is AJ, and we're on the floor today. We're on the floor because next week is Thanksgiving. Those go together because instead of making some video where I print a turkey model or something like that, or rather what I'm thankful for by fixing things with my 3D printer around the apartment. So for example, my surge protector here and all of its cables kind of make a bit of a mess underneath my desk. So I want to find some way to mount the surge protector up out of my way. The first step will be to get the measurements on the thickness of the board that I'm trying to make the brackets fit on. So with a quick little measurement with my calipers, I can see that it is approximately 17 millimeters. So now here we are with the opening screen of Sketchup. It's an in-browser program for computer-aided design. So I'll start by making a blank that are the measurements of the board I just measured. So I'll start with 17 millimeters on one side, and I'll double that for the other side just to show the perspective of the angle. When using SketchUp, I prefer to multiply everything by 10. That way, I can ensure that all of my detail is there when I then shrink it down. If I try to make everything true scale right off the bat, I would lose some details because maybe it wouldn't be able to process something smaller than a millimeter or half a millimeter or even smaller than that. But in a project like this that is all practical and no fancy design, I don't think there are any details to be lost. But the basis of my idea comes from those clips you would use to connect picnic table cloths to a picnic table. I'll start with one of them and kind of work my way around. When it comes to designing things in 3D software, I have really come to embrace the mindset of trying to not reinvent the wheel. It's happened far more times than I can count that I sat down and got stuck in for hours on end, creating something that I was super proud of, only to discover that somewhere else on the internet, someone has already made the exact same thing, but even better than I was planning on doing it. And I could even potentially obtain that for free. It seemed kind of a bit of wasted time. So I'm not trying to do anything fancy with my clip here, I just want it to work. Next, it comes time to make the little knobs that the actual surge protector will be mounted onto. So it just takes a few measurements with my calipers once again, and I can then add them to the model. I do want to be mindful where I place this little peg, but maybe it's for my own OCD. I always like to divide my projects evenly into halves, quarters, eighths, and then use those measurements to go then after that to kind of keep everything in a nice even playing field. So with this software here, I have made a 3D model of what I intend on printing later on, but it is just a 3D representation. My printer doesn't necessarily speak that same language as this software here, so I need to upload it to a different software in order to translate it, I'm saying with quotes, into the language that my printer can then read. As I mentioned before, you can see that I have uploaded that file, and it is 10 times bigger than I want it to be, so I'll go down and reduce that size, and that seems to be almost exactly the size I want it. Now, it does seem like there's some sort of problem with the file I have made. However, this program, which is called the slicing program, however it has translated it, there seems to be this big gap right down through the center. So it looks like I'll have to go back to the previous program to see if I can fix that problem. In the past, when I've run into this issue, it's because I didn't connect everything to each other. As if I made some sort of arts and craft and didn't use any glue, or a carpentry project and didn't use any nails between the boards, the computer doesn't know that they need stuck together. So we'll just attach the two and we'll go back to the other software. Excellent. It looks like this slicing software here does like the new model, so it should be all right to print. And now I mentioned on a previous video, there's only one part of this model here in this orientation that might have some overhanging or drooping parts, so only a little bit of support material will be needed, which will always make for a much nicer print and also less wasted material. And speaking of orientation, it is something I am trying to keep in mind because the orientation of your model in the slicing software and as it prints will make a big difference on how strong the item is or isn't. So if you think of it like a sandwich made of 4 layers, all right? If you have bread, meat, cheese, bread, you have 4 layers there. It is much easier to cut the thing in half by taking off a piece of bread and the meat than it is to rip the whole thing in half vertically. In my head, the weakest part of this item might be the downward pull of the weight of the surge protector, especially if I ever have it, the protector itself, kind of jam-packed with a plug in each socket. I want to make sure that it'll hold nice and strong. So if this bracket is oriented vertically as it prints, then the stress would be along those lines, along the slice of my bread and the slice of my meat. So I want to make sure that as it prints, it has the orientation on its side. Now, checking this here as well, I also noticed that my infill, the dark red, you can see in the image there, was set to just a solid grid, which isn't quite as strong, I have noticed from previous videos on YouTube, that not that I have made, but other creators as well, that a setting called gyroid kind of has a pull and a hold in all directions rather than just up, down, left, and right. So I think it's a bit better if I change it to a gyroid infill as well. And with this all sorted out, it looks like it's time to print. Excellent. So now we have our 2 clips. Right here in the back, in the holes, hopefully this little peg fits. Ooh, that's a very satisfying snap into place. Excellent. One on each side. And it should just hang right there. Well, it does hang a bit droopy, but I think I'm all right with that. So now these are all up. The cables can be just shoved back in behind each side, and it works for me. I would call that a mission accomplished. Join me next week here on 3 Delirium, where we can all hallucinate about the possibilities of 3D printing.